Hello, everyone, and welcome to Owen Mitchell's event to celebrate International Women's Day, which was on the 8th of March. We're excited to welcome so many colleagues and friends of Owen Mitchell to today's webinar. So thank you so much for joining us. As you'll all be aware, today we're talking to three hugely inspiring women in the world of sport, starting with Chloe Morgan, who's a highly successful former professional footballer for Crystal Palace and Spurs. We're also delighted to join Hannah Cockroft, who's an athlete and 7-time Paralympian, Hannah Cockroft OBE, I should say. We've also got Jess Breach, who's a Saracens player and international rugby star, and an England women's player. Today's event's been organised by I Empowered, which is the gender diversity group within Owen Mitchell. My name is Victoria Ward, and I'm a senior associate in the London team at Owen Mitchell, as well as a member of the I Empowered committee in the London office. The objective of I Empowered as a group is to shine a light on gender-related issues and to work to build an inclusive and supportive workplace for our colleagues. And we couldn't think of a better way to celebrate International Women's Day this week than to hold an event speaking to three hugely successful women in the field of sport, where historically there has been and still continues to be a gender imbalance. As I'm sure you will agree, it's an amazing lineup of speakers, and we can't wait to hear more about their individual stories, challenges and successes, and how they each reached the top of their game. You may have noticed when you submitted your RSVP to today's webinar that there was an opportunity to submit some questions to Chloe, Jess and Hannah. So we'll do our best to cover those as we go through today's talks, and there'll be an opportunity for further questions at the end. You might have noticed that there is a Teams chat, so also please feel free to submit any further questions you have as they come to you throughout today's session, and we'll do our best to get through as many as we can. For those who aren't able to make today's session live, it will be recorded, so please do feel free to pass on the link that you receive after today's webinar to any friends, family or contacts who you think might be interested, and please do spread the word. Without further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Chloe Morgan, who's actually one of our solicitors in the medical negligence team in our London office, as well as her footballing prowess. So I'll leave it to Chloe to take things from here and to also introduce you to the rest of our panel and Owen Mitchell ambassadors, Hannah and Jess. Thanks very much, Chloe.
Cheers, thanks so much, Victoria. Thanks again to Hannah and Jess for joining us today. I really can't wait to hear so much more about your stories. I think it's amazing that we've sort of put together this panel. We've got a mix of football, rugby and wheelchair racing. I was speaking to the Department of Culture and Sport the other day, and they were sort of talking about, well, they've coined the phrase squiggly careers, which I found quite interesting to kind of encapsulate the different journeys we've all gone through, the different experiences that we've all had. But I thought maybe just to start us off, it would be amazing if we could just hear from both of you, firstly, just about the journeys that you've had, how you first got into your respective sports, what you love about your respective sports, and yeah, personal career highlights as well. I think it's always good to start on a massive positive note, although I appreciate that both of you might struggle to find just the one highlight, considering how incredible your careers have been so far. So yeah, I'll start with you, Jess. I know it says Lewis Scones in the bottom left-hand corner, but I'm pretty sure it's Jess Breach on the call. So yeah, Jess, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jess. Sorry, I'm on my coach's laptop, currently at training. I would probably say that I think being part of a team sport is probably what I love most about rugby, is that like every day you get to train with your friends, get to play with your friends, and you get to like share really like special moments with them. I'd say today is definitely not the day that I like to do outdoor activity because it's absolutely chucking it down with rain. But yeah, it's really good. You get to like travel a lot, see different places in the world, which I'm sure is very common with other sports. And I'd probably say one of my highlights is obviously getting capped for England and playing at Twickenham, and then obviously going to New Zealand for the World Cup that we just had in October and November last year.
And Jess, I just wanted to quickly add there, so how did you get into rugby in the first place? How did it all start off?
I started playing when I was 6, down at my local rugby club, which is called Chichester Rugby Club in West Sussex. And I played because my dad and my brother played. So I just went along and probably annoyed my brother. And my mum was like, "Oh, you can join your own team if you want, like your own age group." And yeah, never stopped since really. So yeah, I'm now 25, so it's been a long time.
Oh, brilliant. And yourself, Hannah, if you could tell us a little bit about your journey, that would be great.
Yeah, so I think as with any Paralympian, my journey's probably been quite a bit different to Jess's. So actually, growing up, I didn't do sport. I went to mainstream schools throughout my childhood, and I was always the only disabled child, and it was never an issue. You know, I was never bullied. I never struggled at school. The only place where I was really treated differently was when it came to sport. You know, sport for me was PE, sitting on the side and watching. It was sitting in a library reading a book. It was doing homework. If I was really lucky, it was keeping scores of my friends' games, but it was never joining in. And I think from a very early age, I was just taught that sport wasn't for me. It wasn't for disabled people, because we didn't see the Paralympics on TV when I was younger. We didn't have household names that were disabled athletes. And so I think as a young person, you grow to accept that quite quickly. And it's not really like me. I'm very much a person that if you tell me I can't do something, I will go out of my way to prove you wrong. But there just didn't seem to be an alternate option. That changed for me when I went to secondary school. It was very much the same story, you know, still the only disabled student, still expected to sit on the side. But I had a support assistant who was just you just wouldn't mess with her as a woman. Like, she really knew how to push boundaries and think outside the box a bit. And she started kind of asking questions, you know, why did I have to be the one sitting out? Why could they not adapt the sessions? So then school started looking at PE lessons a little differently. You know, I accepted that I couldn't play rugby and I couldn't do cross country, and wasn't that bothered because I'm from Yorkshire, so it was normally freezing cold anyway. So wasn't too upset about missing that. But you know, when the rest of the class were doing athletics, what was the difference between standing up and throwing a discus and sitting down and throwing one? Aside from the fact that someone had to go and pick up the discus and I could throw it further than anyone else in the class, there was no difference. So this one teacher just started changing sessions to get me involved, and that meant that I got spotted and I got invited to it's the biggest multi-sport event outside of the Commonwealth Games. So it's the school games. Went along, I represented Yorkshire and Humberside, and I won a silver medal in the seated discus. And that was the first place that I ever saw wheelchair racing. And I kind of saw it. I thought that looks kind of cool. Got invited along to a come and try day. Saw the race chair up close. Went, nah, not interested. That looks horrendous. Like, if people haven't seen a race chair, you sit on your legs and then you kind of lean over them, and it's the most unnatural position ever. And no, it's not comfortable. It's still not comfortable after 15 years. It will never be comfortable. And my dad, in true Yorkshire style, said, "We've driven 100 miles for this. You're getting in the race chair." So that was my choice, taken out of my hands. But I was 15 years old at this point, you know, and I still wasn't doing that much sport. So I just wanted to throw myself into absolutely anything that I could. And that was me, really. You know, I instantly fell in love. And I know that sounds really cliche, but for me, up until the age of 15, you know, I hated my wheelchair. I really didn't like using it day to day. I felt like it made me really different. I felt that it was something that people looked down on me for using. So I can walk very short different distances. So everywhere at school I would walk, and I would struggle and I would be in pain, but it made me feel like everybody else. And when I got in the racing wheelchair, you know, for the first time, I wasn't having to hold on to an adult's hand. I wasn't having to ask for help. I wasn't being told to slow down or be careful. It was just me, and it was just me being independent for the first time ever. And I think it kind of leads to your second point of that. That's why I loved it. It was freedom and it was independence, and I knew that when I was in that chair, whatever happened was down to me. You know, if I won, that was my victory, and if I lost, then that was something that I needed to work on and to improve. And I think I loved that sense of ownership around something where for the first time I wasn't having to ask for help. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's how I started, and that's where I am.
No, I love that, Hannah. I think it's also really important, I think, to sort of note, I think, you know, from my own experience when I was growing up playing football, you know, there was only, you know, a few girls teams in the sort of local area, and I was quite fortunate in that respect. But I think, you know, a lot of the teams weren't really at elite level at all. And again, I mean, this is sort of showing my age a little bit maybe, but you didn't see, you know, Alex Scott and you know, Kaz Carney on the papers, or, you know, in magazine. We didn't even have Instagram at that time, so there definitely wasn't that kind of access. But yeah, I mean, for you, Jess, obviously you've grown up in a slightly different era to perhaps myself and Hannah as the slightly more mature athletes on the call. But do you feel that it had a massive impact for you, sort of being able to, you know, have greater access to see that, you know, how incredible the women's rugby team setup is, and that those opportunities existed for you? Was that something that sort of played on your mind, and you thought from a young age I could go into a career in rugby, or was it something you sort of naturally fell into a little bit more, or from your dad sort of pushing you a little bit?
Yeah, I think I never really thought it was going to be my like job at the end of the day, but I think when the sevens team got professional in 2016, I think it was, for Rio, I think there was like hope that, you know, maybe one day rugby would be professional and you could call it your job. I think when I was 18, 19, I got called into the like main England team, and then it was just it wasn't professional, but like they wanted it to sort of have that professional era sort of thing. So you would go into camps and, you know, you would think, oh, this is my day-to-day job, but then people would then obviously have to go back and do their job. But I was fortunate enough that I was at uni, so I didn't have that like extra pressure of having to go to work then after training or before training. And yeah, I guess realistically this is my first full-time like job. Like when I was younger, I like worked in bars or worked in coffee shops and stuff, but actually, like, you know, the salary that I've got as a rugby player is the first salary that I think I ever got. So yeah, no, it's really fortunate. I think it's really good for younger girls and boys to see that, you know, they can be a professional, you know, athlete. And I think it's really important that it just keeps growing, and, you know, it's so much more visible now. You can see, you know, any sort of sport on the telly or live stream, and I think that's where it needs to go. People need to be able to see it more to be able to participate and know what they can and can't do.
No, absolutely, and I think you touched on some sort of quite good points there in terms of, you know, having the dual career aspect. I mean, that's something that definitely, you know, resonates with me. I think obviously growing up, you know, being in women's sport, generally it's never paid that well, and there always has to be a sort of fallback option or a plan, you know, in case you get injured or you retire at a later point. I mean, for you, Hannah, obviously, I mean, both of you went to university, but for you, Hannah, did it feel like an important thing to not only be doing wheelchair racing and sort of competing at an elite level, but also to have that education behind you as a sort of, you know, a plan B or something to sort of fall back on once your sort of sporting career comes to an end at some point in the future?
Yeah, so it's something that in athletics we were always really encouraged. You know, I joined the British team when I was 16, so I'd only been racing for a year when I got a call up, and to be honest, that was just luck of timing. There were no girls coming through the sport, and British athletics really needed to push that. So I was kind of right place, right time. But my coach at that time was massively just insistent, really. You know, he always said to me that sport doesn't last forever, athletics definitely doesn't last forever, and I would need something else to fall back on. So they always, you know, he always made sure that there was time for me to finish school, and then finish my A levels, and then I went to college, and then I went to university. And it's something that I am really thankful for as well, because I think mentally, if from such a young age you are just an athlete and that is all you have to your name, then it's so much pressure if you maybe have an off year or the performances aren't quite what you want them to be. Whereas, you know, I could always fall back and kind of switch off, and education was that switch off. You know, some days I was Hannah the athlete, and other days I was Hannah the student, and that was massively important to me, and hopefully something that'll be useful later down the line, but I'm not done yet.
No, I mean, you've both got years left in you. Yeah, I mean, Jess, what are your thoughts in terms of sort of having a dual career? Are there sort of, it comes with difficulties, obviously. You feel like maybe sometimes your time is stretched, you want to give everything to your performances on the field and, the analysis and strength and conditioning work and everything that goes into, playing at elite level, but also, you're tied in terms of the time that you've got to spend in, study and, looking at career options and things like that. Do you find it's quite hard to sort of juggle, both at the same time?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I definitely really struggled. When I first got contracted and was on the 7 series and I was flying to Australia, like San Francisco, like I was like, whoa, this is so cool. Like I don't care about my degree, like that can just go on the side. But I think like when you then get back and you think, oh my God, I've got like 3 assignments due like next week, you then realize, okay, I need to like sort of focus on it. So I think like my younger self, like I think I definitely should have focused on that degree a bit more and like definitely dedicate my time. And I actually then realized like older, I think I had like a year and a half off of like studying or anything, and I actually got not bored, but I was like, I need something else to stimulate my mind. Like rugby just can't be the be all and end all. Like, you go to training and then as an athlete you do have a lot of downtime, and I think actually having something that can go alongside that is really important. So then I picked up and started another degree, just because I wanted something else to do, and I think I was old enough then to realize actually I want to do this, I want something else for the future, and I wanted my time to be useful. I didn't just want to be, there's only so much analysis that you can watch of rugby, and you still want it to be like fun, and you still want to enjoy actually watching rugby games and not having to analyze everything. So yeah, it's definitely a mix, and I think I'd definitely tell my younger self like still focus on uni as much as you want to like enjoy traveling around, because you have a lot of time in the future to be like down, like have off time, and actually sometimes it does get a bit too much and you want something else to focus your mind.
I mean, I can totally understand why you might have been, carried away with being, going to San Francisco and doing these amazing trips rather than going home and doing an essay. So I don't really blame you at all, especially younger self as well. When I was 21, trying to find the time to sit down and do an essay was definitely not one of my priorities. If I was able to travel. But I mean, you touched on there sort of a little bit about identity, and I think that's one of the things I kind of struggled with last year. I mean, I sort of hung up my boots. I retired back in August, and for a large part of my career, I'd always been, or I felt that I was always known as Chloe the footballer. And then I was thinking, okay, well, what's going to happen once I retire? What will I be known as, and how do I fit in the kind of world of sport? And Hannah, I think it would be really interesting to hear from you. I mean, you've obviously got multiple different identities as a friend, a family member, a partner, a Paralympian, and also you've obviously got the media career that we're going to touch on a little bit later. But yeah, is there any kind of fears that you have about just having that singular identity, and has that ever been something that's played on your mind at all?
Yeah, I think it does. Sometimes it pushes you into that fear of the unknown, I guess. I am definitely Hannah the athlete, Hannah the Paralympian, and that's what people know me as. But at the same time, I've always tried to avoid that. So like you say, I tried to pick up other things, and it's so funny, like the amount of people who have no idea that I do sport at all, but know that I presented a country file for a little while, and it blows my mind. I'm like, I literally did 6 episodes and that's what you remember? You seriously haven't seen anything else? But I'm very much I say yes to every opportunity, because I want to try my hand at everything. I want to see what else I can be. And no one wants to be that 2-dimensional person. They want to be as many people as they can be, which sometimes is a lot of work.
No, I think that I mean that rings true for me. I think also I think a lot of the sport and playing sport at this kind of level, it does come with a certain sense of there's a psychological aspect to it. There's it's a very high demand, it's a demanding environment, it's highly pressurized, you're constantly reflecting on things that you've achieved or what you can do better, constant self-criticism, and I just sort of wanted to hear maybe from you, Jess, first off, sort of how you deal with that level of constant scrutiny of yourself, and maybe whether there's do you have a support network around you that sort of help you cope with the demands of playing at that level, especially where with women's sport and disability sport now is getting so much more attention. There's so many more eyes on you guys at the moment. So yeah, how do you cope with that all?
I think it is so tough, and I think actually you'll never properly cope with it when you're in it. I think like you definitely have strategies and you have things in place and you have a good support network, but actually when you get out of it, you then reflect. Like I mentioned earlier, went to the World Cup in October, November, but for me personally it wasn't the tournament that I would have wanted. And I think going to such a big event, you know, I've got 20 plus caps, I've probably started a lot of those games, and a lot of people probably had a lot of pressure riding on me to play a lot of minutes. And I think then going and actually only playing one game out of the whole tournament, like it hits you hard as an individual. And I think as a player, that's not what you wanted, that's not what the outcome you wanted from the tournament. And my parents came out, and I think for me it was the massive disappointment that I didn't give them what we'd all worked for. Like at the end of the day, yes, it's my dream to play at a World Cup, but it's also probably theirs. You know, they took me to the training sessions, they stood there in the rain, they washed my muddy kit, they, you know, picked me up when I was injured, they've, you know, done a lot for me. And for me to then go to, you know, halfway around the world to New Zealand and then play one game and then be there supporting, I think for me that was the biggest thing that I had to like overcome and come back and think, no, that I don't want that to happen again. I'm a better rugby player. I want to be the best, and I don't want to ever be in that position in 2025 when we play at home. So I think it's really tricky, and I definitely learned young. I was in the sevens program and started to not really enjoy it, and I told myself this isn't what I want to do, and I don't have to. I think, you know, sometimes there's a lot of pressure as women. You're like, oh well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get another job or get, you know, another contract, and actually like your mental health is more important than anything else. And I told myself that, and I said, this isn't making me happy, this isn't making me the player I want to be, and, you know, decided to leave, and then got fortunate enough to get contracted with the 15. So yeah, I think it is really tough, but as long as you have good family, friends and support network around you, you can get through anything.
No, I think that's amazing. And I really appreciate you being so open and honest there, Jess. Yeah, I mean, it does come with a lot of difficulties that people don't see, you know, behind the scenes. And yeah, it's only the people sort of closest to you that I suppose, you know, you really let in and sort of, you know, offload those problems that you have and the kind of internal dialogues that you're having. But yeah, from the outside perspective, you know, going to a World Cup, everyone's thinking, oh God, that's incredible, that's unreal. But it's so interesting to hear that actually you felt that was sort of a disappointing thing for you, because like from my perspective personally, I think that's just an absolutely incredible achievement, just having played any minutes at all at a competition at that level. So yeah, no, but I really appreciate you being so open and honest with your response there. And Hannah, how about yourself? How do you deal with the kind of demands, the pressures, the intensity of it all, the kind of constant want and need for, you know, greater perfection? How does it resonate and sit with you?
I think for me, it's changed a lot throughout my career. So I became Paralympic champion when I was 20 years old. I'd only been racing for 5 years. I was still really quite new to the sport. And at that point, there just wasn't any pressure. You know, there wasn't any expectation. I was a new face and people were just excited. I mean, it was London 2012. Everyone was excited anyway about anything that happened. I could have come last and people would have cheered anyway, so it's fine.
I mean, you came very, very far from last, Hannah. That was an incredible year.
It was an amazing year, and I would go back and do it again in a heartbeat, absolutely. But then obviously as I've moved on, I went 7 years unbeaten in my career. Like I didn't lose a single race. So when the day came that I did lose a race, that was probably the feeling that I had that was most similar to Jess's, coming off the track and just thinking, oh, like something's not right. I'm not enjoying this. And I think a big part of it for me was I was just so blasé about the fragility of winning. You know, it is such a fragile thing. Success it can come and go in a heartbeat. You don't know how hard someone else is working. But I think because I'd had success so young, I didn't really appreciate that, and I just took it in my stride and thought, you know, I am the best and this is how it is, and then got handed to me. So I had to change some things pretty quickly. And I went through quite a tough few years, actually. The first time I got beat was 2015. And then 2018, I had a terrible season. Just wasn't pushing well, wasn't happy, was really distracted, with just opportunities coming in. You know, I was starting to think, you know, do I want to be an athlete anymore, or do I want to take these other opportunities? And I kind of had to take myself away. And I think a lot of a lot of success is especially in an individual sport, is deciding what you want. You know, I had to take myself away and go, you know what, if you can't give 100% of yourself to this, then there's no point doing it, because you literally can be anything you want in life. You can do anything you want, but you can't do everything. And I was trying to be a TV presenter, I was trying to be a successful athlete, I was trying to be a uni student. It was too much. But you never realize that. You just say yes and you just keep going, don't you? And you just go, yeah, I can handle this, I can handle this. And it's only when you get on that track and you're not winning and you're losing world records and you're seeing everything that you've built over the last 8 years just disappear, that I was like, well, I need to make some big decisions. So actually now I think criticism's probably helped me, you know, like coming off in 2018 and seeing the headlines of, you know, Cockroft lost her crown, she's not what she used to be, you know, you read it and it hurts. It really hurts. Criticism from other people is horrible because they have no idea what you are putting in to do what you do on that track or on that field or wherever your place of play is. And you kind of want to scream it at them, like, do you understand how hard I'm working to do this? But it made me step back and go, actually, am I working hard? Am I working as hard as I can? And in reality, at that point, the answer was no. So I went into the World Championships in 2019, had made a lot of changes. You know, I'd changed my coach, changed my chair, changed where I lived, changed my club, like literally changed everything there was to change. And I made myself a promise that if that wasn't enough, if 100% commitment wasn't enough to make me the best in the world, then that would be the day that I'd hang up my gloves. Luckily, I became world champion again that year and got my world record back, and touch wood, since then everything's been on track. But it's finding that next challenge. I think that's what gets me. I'm so critical. I've literally just come back from Dubai, where I was competing. I became the fastest British woman ever over the 800 meters, and I still came off the track and went, but I did this wrong and I did this wrong. And I think the minute we stop doing that, the minute we come off and we're 100% pleased with our performances, is the time that we need to stop, because you think you've reached perfection, and I definitely haven't. So I think those moments, you know, my coach kind of took me to a side and went, why are you not happy? And I said, I am happy. But the minute I say that it's perfect is the minute that I'm done. I said, what is the point of me coming off and saying there's nothing to work on? Because that's when you're done too. And he was like, oh, okay, yeah, keep finding things to work on. I need this job. So yeah, I think we have to be critical, but we have to be positively critical. You know, you can't listen to the voices on social media, the voices that will give you everything negative, if you can't take anything away that you can actually work on. So that's really what I've had to try and work on through my career, is finding the positives and finding the ways that we can fix those things and go quicker and get better.
No, I love that. I think there's that constant sort of striving for perfection and never quite feeling that you've reached it. That kind of, you got to 99%, but could there have been a better 1%, or could you have prepped better, or could you have, you know, gone to sleep early, or eaten a different thing, or got a different coach, or there's all those kind of 1%ers that we always talk about. But you touched on there sort of the criticism, the self-criticism that you have. But I just wanted to ask you both about, you know, the pressures of the external criticism that we all face. I know, you know, when I was playing and I was in goal, so if I ever made a mistake, it was normally quite fatal for the game, and it was normally very, very obvious. And I had a few absolute stinkers in my time. But I just think in terms of, you know, being women in sport, I think there's a tendency, I think, for a lot of the criticism to be levied against us a lot heavier than in men's sport, I would say, and the different types of criticism that we get. I mean, I used to get comments like, you know, get back in the kitchen, or we should decide the World Cup by an ironing competition, and those kind of things. You just think, oh my gosh, how are we still facing this kind of stuff in 2023? But yeah, I just wanted to hear from you, maybe Jess first, whether you felt that there was sort of more attention and criticism levied at, you know, you as an athlete from a female perspective, and whether that was something that you'd ever face at all, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
I think for me personally, I haven't really experienced much. I think more it's because of it being a team sport. You definitely get, like, if we've beaten a team, I don't know, like 70 points to 0, they're like, oh, this is classic women's rugby, like, you know, there's one team that's really good and another that's really bad, like it's not even worth it, like all this stuff. Whereas, I don't know, if you watched the games last weekend, like the men's team beat teams like 40-50 points to 5, and it's like, well, you don't say that about them, you just say, oh, that team was on fire today, they're really good. So what is the difference? Just our gender when we play the same sport and the score lines are similar? It definitely shouldn't be. And I think for me, I don't have the stereotypical like stature I think of people relate women's rugby players to. You know, I'm quite small, like obviously being a winger, quite like nippy. So I think, you know, when I do walk down the street or like people go, oh, you play rugby, like I'm like, yeah, and they're like, oh, you too small to play rugby. I'm like, no, like it's definitely a sport that fits a lot of categories. And I think, you know, I used to live with someone, one of my best friends, and it was her birthday, and the RFME posted a picture literally of her like in a training session, like having fun, and literally like someone commented on it, oh, you can tell she eats birthday cake like every day. And I was like, that is just so like out of line, it's unbelievable. And she actually like not wrote back, but like quote tweeted it back and said, like thank you for the like birthday messages, like to do my job to the best of my ability, like this is how I need to be. And I think that definitely is rugby, like not everyone has to be my shape and my height and my physique, because I wouldn't be able to do what, you know, the props do, and they wouldn't be able to do what I do. So I think, yeah, it definitely sometimes does relate to, oh, you know, women aren't very good, or like there's a big disparity, but actually like if you relate it and know your knowledge, then there isn't any.
And how about you, Hannah? Is that something that you've ever sort of experienced? I know, you know, for myself, in terms of, you know, being a goalkeeper, I was of a sort of slightly different stature as well to a lot of my teammates, sort of a little bit stockier build, I suppose. And I used to get so much, so obviously goalkeeping is quite an isolated position. So when we'd had fans come over, they would give me absolute hell on the sidelines, and I'd get things like, go and have another chocolate bar or things like that. And yeah, it's stuff we laugh about it now, but it stays with you, and it kind of resonates, and it's an uncomfortable thing. But yeah, Hannah, for yourself, is that anything that you've ever sort of had experience of in terms of criticism, in terms of you being a woman, and criticism in terms of sort of body image and things like that? That seems to be sort of a big issue at the moment with social media.
Yeah, I think body shape wise, I think disabled people are very hard to pick on, because we're also so different to anybody else. But I find that athletics is a very, I guess, in a very aesthetic sport. You know, you watch sprinters like Dina Asher-Smith or Keely Hodgkinson. They do their makeup, they do their hair, they look lovely when they're on that start line. And I do not. You know, I've got a helmet on and I'm in business. I don't really care what I look like. And I always remember London 2012, winning my first gold medal, so becoming Paralympic champion for the first time ever. And there were more comments online about my acne than there were about my medals. And like something like acne, it's totally uncontrollable. Most people get it, whether they're male or female. And yeah, people were like, oh, like she mustn't sleep. She's got such greasy skin. She must eat terribly. She needs to have a drink of water. All these suggestions, and you're like, did you see what I just did? That my skin didn't stop me from doing. But then also there was like a picture of me on the podium, and people were writing underneath like, oh, veneers at 20. I'd like to point out, these are my own teeth. These are mine, but people were like, oh, she's got veneers. And I was like, it's almost like you get attacked for having something that people don't approve of, like your skin, but you also get attacked when people think that something you have is too perfect. I don't even think my teeth are very nice. So it was really weird for me. But that was a lot to go through at 20, to read all those things and not have it in your head. Obviously, you're already conscious of something like your skin. You're already trying to cover it up. Whereas now I'm not bothered anymore. I think you learn to grow a thick skin and just go, you know what, I'm here for athletic performance. But then I still have it now where I line up on a start line and people go, oh, well, you're not as fast as the boys, so what's the point? And you're like, because I'm not racing the boys, and actually I am quicker than some of the boys. So if you'd like to see me race, let's race. I'm not afraid of racing anybody. And it's just this constant struggle, you know. We have kit in athletics that obviously is not built for wheelchair racers. If we designed our own kit, it would be tight fitted, long sleeved, high necked. We want it aerodynamic. And I remember like 2013, 2014, I got made to wear the men's kit because the women's kit was too inappropriate on me, apparently. And I was like, I'm literally wearing a vest. Like, if you find that inappropriate, I don't know what else to do. And these are the things that you just, I think, especially when you're younger, you just nod your head and you're hurt by it, but you're like, okay. Whereas now, if they came and said that to me now, there would be war.
All right, fight and talk. No, that's really lovely to hear. Yeah, I think you do. I think, you know, being an older athlete, well, an ex-athlete, I think, yeah, the older you get, the sort of more it sort of seems to wash off a little bit easier. But yeah, when I was younger, it definitely used to impact me quite a bit. But yeah, I wanted to move on to something a little bit more kind of positive. I mean, obviously, both of you have got, you know, some incredible events and tournaments sort of coming up in the next year or so. I mean, for you, Jess, obviously, you've got the Six Nations home fixtures, and it's obviously just been announced that, well, it's not just been announced, but it's very common knowledge now that you guys are going to be playing at Twickenham for the sort of very first time as an isolated fixture without the men's. I mean, how are you feeling about that? Sort of what's your preparation like at the moment? Are you any nerves starting to creep in, or are you just excited for the opportunity to be playing there again?
Yeah, I think it's super exciting. We've just had a camp Monday to Wednesday this week, so our first like preparation camp for the Six Nations, and I think everyone's just really excited. I think I remember like two years ago we were playing at stadiums, but they were like kind of like championship stadiums, and they were just had like 5,000 to 7,000 people, but people would like message, be like, I want to get a ticket, but it's sold out. And I think the RFU have really listened to that, and like now we're going to bigger stadiums and we are selling them out. Like, I'm pretty sure we've sold Newcastle out already, and you know that's still got 2 or 3 weeks until we actually play there. So I think that's really good, and yeah, I think everyone loves playing at Twickenham. Like, you ask anyone who've already played there or if they're new, and they just say, I want to play at Twickenham. Like, it's such a fantastic stadium. Like, the grass, I know it sounds weird, but the grass is unreal. Like, the changing rooms are so good. And you just feel like, I think once you've played there, you think, oh, I've played for my country. Like, I've played at the home of English rugby. And I think, you know, we've nearly sold 40,000 tickets. That's nearly half the stadium full, and I think it is really fantastic, and it's going to be a good game. Like, France are, you know, one of the top 3 teams in the world, and you know, it could be a decider of who wins the Grand Slam if we both do really well leading up to that game. And yeah, I just think everyone's super excited, and I think nerves are good. I'm sure Hannah will agree that if you're not nervous, kind of means sometimes you don't really care, and I think, yeah, if you're nervous now, it's definitely a good thing.
I mean, just following on from that, obviously a very hefty rugby calendar this year, but I mean, obviously we're hosting the World Cup in 2025. I mean, looking forward to that. Obviously, it's a couple of years off now, but I mean, that's an incredible opportunity, do you think, to, you know, see sort of, you're already getting amazing attendances this year, to kind of, you know, escalate that and sort of, you know, put women's rugby even further on the map, like, you know, sort of similar to what we saw with the Lionesses in the Euros in summer. Do you think it could be a good opportunity to kind of build that momentum going into, you know, a big home hosted tournament in 2025?
Yeah, definitely. I think we did see a lot of like improvements and growth from even the World Cup in New Zealand, but obviously it's such a big time difference that it is hard for people to watch. But there was definitely, like, we had friends and family at home would be like, oh, I just literally like walked past someone in the park and I was wearing an England jacket, and they said, oh, did you watch the game at 7 a.m. this morning? So I think that it definitely is growing, and I think it would be huge to, you know, get a big crowd for the France Six Nations game at Twickenham, because then it would just be a stepping stone in the right direction for the World Cup. And I think the RFU are definitely putting a lot into it for the 2025, and they want it to be, you know, the best Women's World Cup that there has been for rugby. And you know, New Zealand did do it really well, but I think for me, for it being a home one, like, I want us to do even better, and especially being rivals like on the pitch and as nations, I think we can definitely do that.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I'll definitely be getting my tickets, yeah, for the upcoming games in next month and this month. Yeah, and also for the World Cup as well. I mean, why not? I mean, it'd be fantastic to come down and see the game and see you play. And yeah, for yourself, Hannah, obviously, I mean, had an incredible Tokyo Games, retained the T34 100 meter title after winning gold with a new world record, 16.39 seconds. I mean, that's just unreal, like, just what an achievement anyway. But obviously you've got, you know, Paris coming up next year in August. how you what's your kind of preparation like at the moment, and how are you feeling about that? Sort of, you know, similar thing to Jess, any sort of nerves starting to creep in, or are you still keeping a low profile on how you're sort of building up in preparation?
Oh, there's no low profile ever with me. Yeah, just literally, like, I just got back from Dubai last week. I broke 4 world records while I was out there. So yeah, no holding back. I'm here to show my mean business, but got a lot of new girls kind of creeping through. So I'm trying to travel around, see them before we get there. We've got World Championships this July in Paris. So we'll kind of get a little warm up before the Paralympics next year. But we've got a really busy 18 months because we've got World Champs this July, and then we've got another World Championships in Japan in May, and then we've got the Paralympic Games obviously in August next year. So a lot to kind of try and squeeze in. And yeah, I am nervous. You know, every time a games comes up, more coverage means more girls get in the sport, and that's the aim, you know. And I think you'll both agree, as a female athlete, that's all you want to inspire. You want other girls to see what you do and go, I want to do that. But we saw kind of post London 2012, just a massive rivalry that came out for me from that. Rio and Tokyo didn't quite get the attention that London did, but I think Paris is going to be huge, and I think Channel 4 are going to do some fantastic things with it. So yeah, I'm nervous to get on that track, but I'm also so excited. You know, if you're not excited about it, then there's no point being an athlete, because I love what I do. I love showing people what I do, and the best opportunity I get to do that is when we get to the big championships. So everything to lose, but also everything to win.
I mean, that's a great way to wrap up the conversation. I'm just going to throw it open to the floor, if that's okay. I think we've had a couple of questions come through from people listening and watching in. So the first question, I'll throw it to you, Jess. No pressure at all. What do you look forward to most in the future as women's sport continues to grow? And if you could pick something to accelerate that growth, what would it be? So just a small question to start with.
I think I'm just looking forward to seeing, like, girls in the park throwing a rugby ball around. I think you see it all the time that boys are in the park, they have a football, they have a rugby ball, and I just think it's really important that, you know, girls have that same opportunity. Like, I think the Lionesses have done a huge thing by getting, you know, the 2 hours of PE, you know, and football into schools. And I think, you know, it's a stepping stone in the right direction for all women's sport. And I think that's what I want to see in the future. I want girls to have the opportunity to play rugby. You know, you don't have to enjoy it. It's not for everyone. But I just think have that opportunity to have a go and try it. Like, and if that's at school and you do it for half a term and you think, actually, I've really enjoyed that, I want to carry on, then go to your local rugby club and them having teams. And I think that's also definitely that needs to improve. Like, I think rugby clubs need to have girls and women's teams, because that's what I think makes the game grow. Like, yes, you can have so many boys, but, you know, what about their sisters, what about their cousins, what about their neighbours? And I think that's where it needs to go. And I think it will help by having rugby clubs have girls teams, as well as, you know, our Six Nations will be on BBC and the iPlayer, but I think it's just constantly keep growing that, and, you know, fighting for the coverage. And yes, just because, you know, the men's premiership is on BT and they think people are going to watch that more than our games, but actually they might not. They might want to watch us instead of the boys. So it's just having that visibility, I think, will just be really important. And that's what I'm looking forward to, that I can just turn on the telly on a Saturday when I'm sitting in front of the fire with my dog and thinking, yeah, I'm going to watch a women's game, because that's what I can do.
While you were speaking there, Jess, just had one of my colleagues comment on the chat, saying she's very much looking forward to the 29th of April at Twickenham. Very proud of England and your performances so far. Love how you guys have helped grow the women's game and inspire more girls to get involved. So yeah, just a bit of feedback there. But yeah, I think Hannah, for yourself, I mean, what is it that you're most looking forward to as the future of women's sport continues to grow? And if you could pick something to accelerate that growth, what were your thoughts on that?
I think exactly the same as Jess, you know, seeing women's sport visible and out there and easy to access. She's totally right when she says, you know, we get introduced at school, and parasport even more so, and then you leave school and where do you go? There are not enough clubs, there is not enough funding, there's not enough of anything to make sure that every girl remains active and finds a sport for them, and parasport is just way down that. You know, we have quick maths, I think we have about 7 clubs in the whole of the UK that offer wheelchair racing. 7 clubs. So if you're in the north, you can either go to Leeds or to Liverpool. If you're in Scotland, there's 1 club, and then there's a club in London, there's a club somewhere south of that, and that's you. So it's so difficult. And yet, how many running clubs do we have? We probably have, every town has a running club, so why do they not own a race chair? And it's something that I'm always banging on about and trying to drive home. But inactivity in disabled people is massively high, especially following COVID. So I agree with Jess. We need the visibility so that then we could drive forward the actual demand for women wanting to be active. So then someone has to react and offer the facilities and offer the funding for it to go ahead. So definitely not one thing that I want. I want everything. I want everything now. Do it now.
Absolutely, and rightly so. Yeah, I mean, Jess, you touched on there. Obviously, there's sort of big announcement yesterday for the Lionesses about the FA and the campaign they've had with the Education Secretary to try and improve equality and access to resources and things at school. But yeah, I mean, for both of you, do you think there sort of needs to be more encouragement, especially for you, Hannah? I suppose I think obviously there's sort of 2 spheres to it in terms of girls being granted access to sport, but also from a disability perspective. I mean, you know, growing up, you know, 25 or so years ago when I was doing PE, I mean, we didn't have that, there wasn't that kind of level education, I think, from teachers knowing how to you know, navigate children with disabilities and how to cater lessons and make sure that everyone feels included in those. Do you think there's still a sort of a lack of understanding there from the education system in terms of how we make sure that everyone is included in sport?
Yeah, I think absolutely you've hit the nail on the head, really. It's knowledge, it's education, it's teachers having the confidence and having the freedom to try and adapt sessions. You know, for me growing up, it was all just health and safety. It was red tape that was making me not be able to get involved. You know, I could easily have taken my wheelchair along to school, but it was always, oh, well, what if you run over another child, or what if, you know, what if something happens? And you're like, well, kids knock each other over all the time. We bounce, you know, you get back up, you carry on. It's fine, but that was what was stopping it, and we still need to push through that. You know, we need teachers to be given the support really to get everyone involved, and that's just girls in general. You know, get girls in general involved. There might be other reasons why they don't want to do PE, they don't want to be active. Then let's give them the freedom to adapt the lesson plan or change it to something that makes sure that everyone is included. And it's so important, but it's just education. It's just knowing that you've got the support, you've got the facilities, and you've got the knowledge to go out there and do it.
And Jess, I mean, I'd love to hear from you about your thoughts and what kind of advice you'd give for young girls growing up nowadays who would be looking to get into sport, and specifically, you know, rugby. I mean, you're an incredible role model yourself, so even just, you know, being able to turn on the news and seeing what you guys are up to, or being able to go on Instagram and seeing the kind of profile that you're raising. But yeah, what would be your advice to a girl thinking about getting into rugby at this time?
I think like anything a boy can do, you can do as well, and I think that's what's really important. Like, just because we're a different gender doesn't mean that it will stop us from doing something. And I think, like, just go down to your local rugby club and have a go. Like I said, you don't have to enjoy it. You might then next weekend go to the local football club and you might really enjoy that. But it's just getting girls into as many sports, or trying as many sports as possible. You know, I personally like watching football, but I was rubbish, absolutely awful. Like, couldn't kick a ball to save my life. So like, it never interested me because I wasn't good at it, and I had that competitive spark. I was like, I need to be the best at everything, so I can't continue doing this. And I think, you know, if you're enjoying something, you carry it on, but if you're not, then there's no pressure. And I think that's what's so crucial. Like, you have to do something with a smile on your face to enjoy it, to get the best out of you. And if you're not doing that, then that's okay. There's going to be something else that you enjoy, and you can, you know, go and get fit and go and do it with your friends.
And how about for yourself, Hannah? What advice would you be giving to a girl thinking about getting into sport at this time, and specifically, I suppose, in terms of the kind of resources? I mean, you mentioned there that there are only 7 clubs kind of available that were really sort of having those opportunities there. Do you think there's sort of any advice that you could give to if there's any resources out there that you're aware of that might help?
Yeah, so I think my advice would just be go out there and try everything. You know, I tried a few different sports before I found wheelchair racing, and I think there's a lot of pressure on people kind of, oh, you're good at this, you should do this. But actually, if you're not passionate about it, then passion is the way that you're going to be successful. So find a sport that you enjoy. You know, I think Jess will probably agree, and yourself as well, Chloe. I don't wake up in the morning and obviously I look out the window and I'm like, oh, it's snowing. I don't want to do that session. But you get out there and you're like, like that was so much fun. I've never finished a session and gone, I hated that. That was horrendous. So find the sport that makes you feel like that. And as Jess said, you know, if that's involving your friends, if that, you know, don't feel the pressure that not everybody wants to be an elite athlete. You know, we need to get rid of that presumption. Not everyone wants to be the next Usain Bolt or whoever. So if you just want to go out and get a little bit fit, then go for a jog or go to the gym, do whatever you're doing, and don't let people's comments stop you from doing that. But actually accessing disability sport wise, so there's a really cool website that launched a couple of years ago now, I think, just around Tokyo, just the Parasport website, and you can type your postcode into it and it brings up all the Parasport clubs in your area, and then obviously you can kind of filter it down, so you could find a wheelchair rugby club or you could find a wheelchair racing club. And then there's also loads and loads of charities around that, you know, if you want to be a wheelchair racer or you want to play wheelchair rugby or you want to play wheelchair basketball, and obviously the chairs are, well, they're quite pricey. But a lot of charities out there, especially if you're under 21, want to help you get active. So just get in touch with them. There's Whiz Kids, who I'm a patron for. There's FizzCap if you're in Yorkshire. I literally could just reel them off, but just have a Google. There's loads out there, and they definitely want to help disabled people get active. So get in touch. But yeah, don't be afraid to try as many sports as you can, because I had a great time finding my sport.
Oh, brilliant! No, thank you for that, Hannah. That's really helpful. Yeah, and I think a slightly easier question now. I've only got 2 more left. Don't worry. So we had who is your inspirational female? Obviously, in keeping with the line of it being International Women's Day, or a slightly belated International Women's Day. Jess, I'll throw to you first. Who's your inspirational female? You can pick a few if you want to.
My mum. I know it's probably quite cliche, but I don't think I realised it until I think it was 4 years ago. She got diagnosed with breast cancer. So I think now I'm like, oh God, like you have gone through so much. Like she was a nurse, like in the NHS, like worked in A&E, like, but she still drove me to, you know, every training session I had. She was still there, like as in when she was working full time. And then, yeah, when she got diagnosed, I think it made me realise, again, rugby's not the be all and end all. Like family definitely comes first. I enjoy spending time with her, and I, you know, wanted her to be better, and I wanted to share lots of memories with her. Like I took her to Wimbledon, like we went to go see the guy who's in The Greatest Showman, where I can't remember his name, who's at the O2.
Hugh Jackman,
yeah, and she absolutely loved it. She was like a massive fangirl, and she was like singing his songs, and like I think that was really important. And you know, she's in remission now, and we've got 1 more year to go, but I think, yeah, she's my biggest inspiration. And you know, I do everything for, you know, my parents and my family, but you know, she is definitely someone that I look up to. And I always say to her, oh mum, if I was just a bit clever, I would have loved to have been a pediatric nurse. And she was like, you can do it, and I was like, nah, I don't think so, because I just wanted to be like her. So yeah, definitely my mum.
Oh no, thank you so much for sharing that, Jess. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about what you guys have been through, but really happy and glad to hear that she's in remission. So wishing you guys all the best. But yeah, thank you for that. And Hannah, how about yourself? Who's your inspirational female?
Well, Jess's mum, after hearing that. Yeah, no. So in sport, a lady called Chantal Petitclerc. So Chantal is the most decorated female wheelchair racer ever. She won 14 Paralympic golds in her career. And I was lucky enough to have her as my games coach at London 2012. So just her knowledge and her experience and what she was willing to give to me during that time was invaluable, and is probably a massive part of why I did so well while I was there. So just amazing to have had her as part of my career. And then I think outside of sport, you know what, I'm inspired by the girls that I race against, because actually without them I wouldn't have the race, I wouldn't have the competition, I wouldn't have the opportunity. And they've all each got an individual incredible story to tell, and a different barrier, a different journey that they went through to get on that start line. And actually, you know, they're the ones that keep me going. You know, I look at them and they're the ones that motivate me to, right, I need to go and do that training session today, I need to work on this, I need to do this. And that inspires me massively, that we can kind of drive each other forward, and we can make parasport so much stronger together. So yeah, just all the girls that I line up against and race against.
I love that. You've always got to hate and love the competition at the same time. It's a double-edged sword. And final question. I mean, Jess, obviously you're still very much in the middle of your career. Yeah, I mean, I was sort of thinking, sort of looking forwards to the future, and you know, do you sort of think about at this time, you know, life after sport and what that might look like in terms of sort of a career going onwards, or would you want to stay in rugby, or actually branch out into being a paediatric nurse after your career ends? Yeah, what's next for you after, if you've even thought about it?
Definitely not being a paediatric nurse. I don't think I could now do the 5 years of uni again. But yeah, so going back to probably the very beginning of this whole thing, I said I got 2 degrees. So I've got one in sports science and then one in sports communication and marketing. So I think that's probably the line of work that I'd want to go down after, because I just really want to get into, you know, companies or sports companies and ask them, you know, why don't you market women's sport? Why haven't you invested? Like, what's your barrier? What's stopping you? Because, you know, at the end of the day, if we as rugby had a massive sponsor, or like someone partner behind us that was like female orientated, we'd love it. Like, and you wouldn't even need to, for us, I think this is where it's so fresh and new as women, you know, you take everything as it comes, whereas the men are like, oh, but you know, how much am I going to get paid for that? Or I don't really like that. Where for us, we're very like, no, I'll do anything to grow the game. And I think, you know, that's what I want to go into, having been in it and then wanting to push companies and, you know, brands to be like, what more can you do? Because you can definitely do more.
I think we can never have enough people who are asking big questions like that. Yeah, it still surprised me in 2023 that we need to ask those questions. But yeah, someone like yourself with the kind of platform experience and the achievements that you've had asking those questions is going to carry a lot of weight. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what you get into after your career, but also looking forward to obviously the next few years for you and all the amazing achievements that are coming up. But yeah, for yourself, Hannah, I mean, obviously, you know, you studied journalism and media at Coventry, and we've obviously seen you a little bit on TV with the Great British Bake Off and Country Files. So yeah, well, what's next for you?
Well, hopefully keep competing for as long as I can. Outside of that, I did my coaching qualifications last year, so I'm coaching a young girl at the moment who's coming through, and hopefully can pick up a few more youngsters and teach them everything I know or don't know. And yeah, I don't know. I don't have any solid plans. I'm very much just a person who goes with the flow. I'd love to do more work in television and in the media when I'm done. But as well, like, I kind of feel responsible that I need to pass on all this great knowledge that I've been given during my career. So maybe a bit of coaching, could be anything. But at this point, I just want to keep pushing for as long as I can. So I've definitely got 1 games left in me and maybe one after that. So we'll see.
Oh, brilliant. That's lovely. No, thank you so much, both of you, for being so open and honest in your answers, and yeah, for having such a lovely discussion and sharing all your experiences. And yeah, really looking forward to seeing you both compete in your respective competitions coming up in the next couple of months, next summer. Yeah, and I'd love to come down to a couple of games, definitely, Jess, and come and watch you play and meet you in person, which would be absolutely lovely now that we can all do that. But yeah, thank you so much for giving up your time and being a part of our International Women's Day. It's been a really, really great conversation. But yeah, I'll let you both go. I'll let you all go. Thanks everyone for watching and tuning in, and for the questions that you've all given us. And yeah, happy belated International Women's Day to everyone.